I have stood on countless battlefields without drawing my sword. I have watched enemies destroy each other without lifting a single finger, because the true warrior is not eager to act, he is eager to win. And those are not the same. Men who strike first often strike blindly. They confuse motion with mastery, noise with strength, panic with courage. But I have learned that the one who moves last moves with all the information the battle can offer. You want to rush because you feel behind, because your pride is louder than your patience. You want to show them you are unafraid. But haste is not bravery. It is just fear, poorly disguised. Let the others run forward. Let them scream, clash, bleed. Let them waste their energy trying to be seen. Because the battlefield has no reward for the one who shouts loudest, only for the one who survives. I move like the shadow of inevitability. You see, time is not your enemy. It is your greatest spy. It shows you where the enemy is weak. It whispers who is bluffing, who is desperate, who is waiting to be broken. If you move too early, you silence time before it can speak. I don't step forward to match the enemy. I step only when the outcome has already begun to lean in my favor. And by then, their hands are tired. Their formations are frayed. Their minds are unsure. They do not see me coming because they stopped looking. The best general does not win because he is stronger. He wins because he is still calculating while others are reacting. He understands that victory belongs not to the one who acts first, but to the one who acts last, after everyone else has made their mistakes. I don't interrupt chaos. I wait for it to collapse. I do not silence confusion. I let it echo until it deafens them. And when they beg for clarity, I bring silence. Sharp, swift, final. To be last is not to be slow. To be last is to be sovereign. It means I needed no validation. It means I built no trap I couldn't walk away from. It means I had the discipline to let go of glory for the sake of certainty. When you always want to move first, it means you are still ruled by the battlefield. But when you can wait, watch, withhold, the battlefield begins to move around you. Every misstep your enemy takes becomes part of your strategy. Every delay becomes a blade they walk into. A lion does not chase ants. He watches the herd, senses weakness, waits for alignment. He does not roar before he strikes. He strikes, and the roar follows. This is how a war is won, not in noise, but in knowing. I've seen empires crumble because their leaders mistook aggression for dominance, because they couldn't endure stillness, because they were terrified of being seen as weak. But stillness is not weakness, it is mastery. The ones who must always prove themselves are already lost. The ones who wait, they are carving the path to inevitable control. Each pause sharpens their precision. Each delay strengthens their impact. The best general does not chase the moment. He builds the moment. He knows the final strike rewrites the entire battle. It doesn't matter who moved first. It only matters who still stands when everything else has fallen. So, when you feel the urge to jump, to prove, to chase, wait, breathe, watch, because the first to move must reveal himself, but the last to strike, he reveals the truth that every earlier move was just noise, and his silence was the storm they didn't see coming. I am not slow. I am not scared. I am not frozen. I am choosing the moment when your energy is gone, your pattern is broken, your certainty has vanished. And then I step forward, only once, only when it's time, and only to end it. Because the best general moves last, and because he moves last, he never has to move twice. Most men are terrified of inaction. They mistake silence for irrelevance. They believe that doing nothing means being nothing. But I have learned that silence is a sword, sharp, deliberate, and far more dangerous than shouting. When you move last, the world will doubt you. They will call you hesitant. They will question your courage. They will mistake your strategy for stagnation. But let them, because while they speak, you are watching. While they advance, you are calculating. And while they burn themselves out, you are preserving every ounce of strength for a strike that will matter. To move last requires discipline few can understand. It demands that you withstand pressure without folding. It demands that you ignore applause meant for others. It demands that you learn to see every premature action as a gift, a map of your opponent's fear. I do not fight for approval. I do not move to match their noise. The battlefield is not a stage, and I do not perform. I execute, with purpose, with certainty, with finality. Understand this: the one who strikes first may start the war, but the one who strikes last ends it. And between those two moments lies the space where power is truly earned. That space is filled with observation, restraint, and understanding. It is the space where a lesser man panics, and a true general becomes legend. You want to act now because the silence is unbearable. But the silence is not empty. It is full of information, full of shifts in posture, cracks in confidence, and small mistakes that build into collapse. I've seen warriors lose everything not because they were weak, but because they couldn't wait. They charged into traps they should have seen. They fought battles they could have avoided. They exhausted their forces, proving a point no one would remember. The best generals are not remembered for every fight they entered, but for the wars they ended without ever being touched. Victory is not about constant motion. It is about calculated presence, being exactly where the moment needs you and nowhere else. Let others build fires to be seen. I become the wind. They will not know where I am until they feel me at their throat. That is the art of moving last. And do not confuse waiting with passivity. I am not idle. I am watching the map shift, watching egos rise and fall, watching enemies turn on each other. Each moment I wait, the odds tilt further in my favor, until the very battlefield begins to whisper, now. And when that whisper comes, I do not hesitate. Because I have waited so long, I no longer wonder what to do. I know. I don't need to prepare. I already have. I don't need to force. I only need to arrive. In war, there are those who swing wildly, and there are those who place one strike with such clarity and finality that nothing more needs to follow. That is the strike of a man who moved last. You want power? Learn stillness. You want control? Learn to wait. Because every early move you don't make becomes a trap someone else will fall into. Every step you refuse to take forces them to guess again. And guesswork, over time, becomes panic. I have turned entire armies around by never drawing my blade. I have won battles simply by forcing the enemy to grow tired of their own aggression. When you are calm, you see everything. When you are last, you inherit the truth of the entire conflict. You inherit the mistakes, the fatigue, the fear, and with one deliberate move, you bring peace through precision. So let them mock your patience. Let them scoff at your restraint. Let them claim victory before the fight is finished. Because in war and in life, the one who moves last is often the one who never needs to move again. And that is the quiet power they'll never understand. Not until it's too late. Not until they're staring into silence and realizing it was strategy all along. Not until they fall. And I never had to raise my voice to defeat them. The first to move shows his hand. He reveals his desires, his fears, his level of preparation. Every step he takes is a message, and I read it all. His urgency betrays him. His aggression makes him predictable. And predictability is a death sentence in the hands of someone patient enough to wait. I do not flinch at provocation. I do not respond to noise, because I know those who taunt are trying to bait a reaction, not because they are ready, but because they are afraid of stillness. The man who fears stillness is already conquered. He must keep moving, keep shouting, to drown out the doubt inside him. But I listen for that doubt. I let it grow. I let silence stretch long enough for him to hear himself crumbling. You think momentum belongs to the one who starts? No. Momentum belongs to the one who absorbs every blow without collapsing and still has clarity left when everyone else is exhausted. Because the storm doesn't win by arriving first. It wins by being the last thing standing. I have stood in rooms full of voices, each demanding action, each one terrified of what might happen if we waited. But fear does not make good strategy. Fear makes noise, and I do not serve noise. When you feel pressure to act, ask yourself, who benefits from my panic? Because more often than not, your enemy doesn't want you to wait. He wants you to act. Act without thinking. Act on instinct. Act on fear. That's when you make mistakes. That's when you abandon structure. That's when he wins. Not because he was stronger, but because you moved too soon. To move last is to trust in your foundation. To believe that the battle is not a race, but a puzzle. And puzzles aren't solved by rushing. They're solved by observing, testing, adjusting, until the one perfect piece slides into place and everything else must fall around it. My presence is deliberate. If I stand still, it's because the terrain tells me to. If I wait, it's because time is still gathering data. If I hold back, it's because the enemy has not yet exposed their true weakness. And when I do strike, I do not swing in every direction. I strike where it ends, where their defense folds, where their structure breaks, where their will gives out. They will say, "Why didn't he fight sooner? Why didn't he engage earlier?" But once they fall, they'll stop asking, because then they'll know. Every second I waited was part of the plan. Even when I do nothing, I am still choosing, still directing, still shaping the outcome. Because waiting is not absence. It is dominance in a quieter form, the kind they can't see until it's too late. Look around. The battlefield is full of men trying to prove something, trying to be heard, trying to be first. But first is not always best. Loud is not always clear, and early is not always right. Sometimes, the most dangerous warrior is the one you've forgotten to watch, the one who hasn't moved yet, the one who has said nothing, because he is the one who knows. When the chaos ends, the last voice will echo the longest. Do not envy the man who acts fast. Pity him, for he may be brave, but bravery without structure is just sacrifice, and war is not a place for martyrs. It is a place for victors. And victors don't throw themselves into the fire. They wait until it burns itself out. I am not here to participate. I am here to prevail. I am not concerned with appearances, only outcomes. So I will not move to satisfy your impatience. I will not speak to soothe your insecurity. I will not act to silence your doubt. I will stand. I will breathe. I will wait. And when I move once, you will understand everything. Because the best general needs only one move to finish what 100 others started. If you ask me how many battles I've fought, I will not answer with numbers. Because I don't count battles the way others do. Most count every clash, every conflict, every swing of the sword. But I count only the ones where I chose the moment. where I owned the tempo, where I moved last, and because of that, moved with power. You see, the world rewards action. It celebrates motion. It praises those who leap first, who speak first, who strike first. But the world rarely stays to see who finishes last. And in war, it is the finish that decides everything. I've seen kings lose their crowns because they couldn't bear the quiet, because the silence screamed louder than their advisors, and they mistook discomfort for danger. They ordered armies to march before their scouts returned. They spilled blood to soothe their doubt. And the enemy didn't even need to fight. He simply waited for their fear to do the work. I do not obey fear. I do not run from uncertainty, because I have learned that the most important moment in war is the one you don't take. The sword you don't swing. The charge you don't lead. Not because you were afraid, but because you were listening. I listen with more than ears. I listen with eyes, with breath, with stillness. I listen to the patterns in the dust, to the silence between movements, to the exhaustion hiding behind arrogance. And when the moment finally arrives, there is no need for fanfare. Just a single step, just a single command, and everything shifts. The warrior who waits is the one who understands terrain. He uses it like a blade. He lets the wind wear down the fortress. He lets the sun burn the impatient. He lets the enemy fight nature before they ever fight him. There is no need to rush when the field fights for you. Let the rain flood their path. Let the mud slow their retreat. Let their own urgency turn them against each other. And when they are knee-deep in their own mistakes, that is when I appear. Not to struggle, but to finish. Those who move first often mistake reaction for control. But control does not come from movement. It comes from alignment. When your mind, your position, and your purpose all arrive at the same point, you strike, and the world bends around you. If you strike too early, you may win a skirmish, but you lose the war. You reveal your strength too soon. You force a battle you didn't need to fight. You spend energy you can't recover. And worst of all, you become predictable. Every early move tells a story, and I am always listening to the story. Let others write their chapters in haste. I write mine in silence, and when the time comes, mine is the final word. You want to feel powerful? Resist the need to prove it. You want to become unshakable? Learn to wait when others tremble. Because patience is not weakness. It is control that runs so deep, you don't need to show it to believe it. I have seen warriors try to dominate by striking first, and I have watched them collapse, not because they lacked skill, but because they lacked timing. Their sword was sharp, but their moment was dull. And dull timing kills even the sharpest blade. You can train your body endlessly. You can master every tactic, every form, every strategy. But if you cannot master your impulse, you will never win when it matters most. To move last is not just a tactic. It is a way of thinking, a way of being. It means you see the battlefield not as a place of reaction, but as a place of orchestration. You are not reacting to the noise. You are composing the silence. So the next time you feel rushed, the next time your heart races to prove yourself, stop. Wait. Ask. Is this the moment or just a moment? Because when the real moment comes, you won't feel the need to announce it. You won't question it. You'll simply move. Once, fully, finally. And everything before it will feel like noise fading into silence. Because that's what the last move does. It silences every move that came before it. You must understand, the most dangerous moment is not when your enemy attacks. It's when you're tempted to answer too soon, because that moment is not about the enemy. It's about your own discipline. Can you sit in discomfort without reaching for relief? Can you let them scream without screaming back? Can you remain still while everything around you begs you to move? That is the moment where generals are made. Not on the battlefield, but in the waiting room of war. I have sat in silence while my enemies celebrated. I have let them believe they had won, because I know that premature celebration is just another form of blindness. Let them dance. Let them declare victory. Let them grow bold, because every step they take toward overconfidence brings them one step closer to collapse. I win by letting them think they've already won, and in that illusion, they expose themselves. They stop planning, they stop watching, they start assuming, and assumptions are the cracks through which I walk unseen. Do not confuse inaction with absence. The wind does not shout, but it can tear down empires. The tide does not rush, but it drowns everything in its path. Likewise, I do not rush to strike. I erode resistance. I let your structure decay until you are defending a memory, not a position. They say fortune favors the bold, but that is only half true. Fortune favors the bold when boldness is paired with wisdom, not when it is reckless, not when it is loud, not when it is first. 1,000 men may leap forward. I send one man last, and that one man ends what the 1,000 could not, because he did not carry the burden of pride. He carried the clarity of timing. What happens when you move last? You inherit every advantage. You move with knowledge of their plan. You move when their strength has already waned. You strike not into resistance, but into surrender, already blooming beneath the surface. The best general is not obsessed with control. He is obsessed with alignment, with moving only when everything points to victory. Not earlier, not louder, not faster, just sharper. And sharper means later. They will tell you that hesitation is dangerous, and they are right. But what they don't tell you is that hesitation is only dangerous when it comes from doubt, when it comes from fear. But when hesitation is chosen, when it is deliberate, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes calculation. I don't hesitate because I am unsure. I hesitate because I want to be certain. And when certainty arrives, so does power. Quietly, without argument, without need for applause. And this is why I win. Because while others are fighting to be seen, I am becoming undeniable. There is a kind of silence that feels like defeat to the impatient. But to the disciplined, it feels like sharpening steel, like breathing before the final blow, like sunrise before the fire begins. When you wait, you gain leverage. Leverage over time, leverage over pressure, leverage over the enemy's exhaustion. You wait long enough, and even the strongest wall starts to crumble. You wait long enough, and even the loudest voice loses its audience. You wait long enough, and you don't need to overpower the enemy. You simply need to outlast him. Outlast the chaos. Outlast the fear. Outlast the urge to act before it's time. This is how I fight. This is how I win, by letting the war come to me, and when it does, I do not flinch. I do not overextend. I do not hesitate. I simply move once, and the war ends. Because the best general moves last, and he moves with everything that came before him behind his back. Every mistake, every crack, every blind spot, all of it, weaponized in one final perfect decision. They often ask me, what if you wait too long? What if you miss the opportunity? And to them I say this: if you miss the first wave, you haven't missed the ocean. If you miss the shout, you haven't missed the war. Opportunities are not singular. They are layered, shaped by the errors of others and refined by those who wait. The impatient seize the moment. the disciplined shape the moment. To wait is not to delay, it is to mold. Each pause is not absence, it is preparation. Each still hour is not wasted, it is spent learning, absorbing, anticipating. So that when I do move, the moment bends to me, not the other way around. You don't have to chase what you can quietly draw toward you. I do not need to sprint when the battlefield will eventually slope in my favor. Why run uphill when I can let gravity do the work for me after they've exhausted themselves at the summit? Patience is not only a strategy, it is a weapon. It is restraint sharpened into steel. Because while others reveal their strength in action, I reveal mine in refusal. To refuse the first impulse is to gain sight of the bigger pattern. I do not want to win the hour. I want to win the era. And that kind of victory cannot be rushed. Every battle has many layers. There is the noise above, and then there is the structure below. Those who move first often scratch at the surface, but I dig until I find the fault lines. And when I strike, it is not against the enemy's skin. It is at the foundation of their power. Because the final move is not just about position, it is about precision, and precision is born in silence. It is born in the pause that others fear. People think silence is void. They think waiting is weakness. But silence is full of clues, full of cracks, full of overlooked truths. The man who cannot bear to wait is the man who cannot see what is hidden. And it is always the hidden that changes the course of war. Look closely. Every premature move is an act of fear, even when it looks bold, even when it looks brave, because true confidence doesn't need to rush. True control doesn't need to shout. It only needs to know, and knowing takes time. That's why I don't move first, not because I can't, but because I choose to know more. More about you, more about the field, more about the rhythm that will decide how this ends. By the time I move, you will already have told me everything, through your decisions, your mistakes, your urgency, and I will have said nothing, but still written the outcome. That is the power of waiting. It turns your every movement into my map. It turns your confidence into my compass. You want to win? Then stop trying to be impressive. Be invisible instead. Let them forget you. Let them underestimate you. Let them believe you are behind, while you are simply watching them walk into their own trap. Because by the time they see you move, it will be too late. They will already be cornered, not by your presence, but by their own missteps. And when you strike, they won't just fall. They'll collapse inward, because every decision they made before you arrived was unknowingly aligned with your victory. That is what it means to move last. It means you don't arrive to fight, you arrive to finish. And nothing echoes louder than the silence that follows your final step. It is often said that a strong warrior strikes when the moment is ripe. But what if I told you the moment isn't the right one until you say it is? What if the ripeness of the moment is entirely within your hands? I have seen men race forward to seize what they thought was opportunity, only to find themselves trapped by the very thing they pursued. They moved because they were afraid of losing the chance, but in doing so, they made a choice that only led them to waste. Because opportunity does not always come dressed in a single form. It is an elusive force, sometimes appearing only after the noise has quieted. It comes to those who can outlast the chaos, those who have mastered the art of waiting, those who wait without fear, wait without regret. They are not bound by urgency, for they know urgency is the companion of uncertainty. Those who wait, who resist the natural urge to act prematurely, are the ones who control the field. Their clarity remains unbroken. Their purpose remains true. If you watch carefully, you will see that all movements before the final one are merely the preparation, the distractions, the missteps, the false moves that show the enemy what they want to see. These moves are not mistakes, they are tests, and they are necessary tests. Because the best general does not only win by being last, he wins by knowing which moves must come first. He wins by forcing the enemy to tire themselves, by letting them empty their strength in battles that do not matter. He wins by understanding that every action before his final strike is just a step in their own self-destruction. When I wait, I am not idle. I am not passive. I am not giving up ground. I am laying the groundwork for my final move, for the blow that will come when the conditions are perfect. And because I have given no hint of what is to come, it will be swift, it will be decisive, and it will be irreversible. If you are too quick to act, you show your hand too early. You expose your strengths, and that is a fatal flaw in war. If I know your strengths, I can understand your weaknesses. If you act too quickly, I know you will reveal them. And then, my move will not be to outfight you. It will be to outlast you. The world rewards those who act first, but the true victor does not care for the world's praise. He only cares for the result, the moment when his single perfect move ends the struggle. I do not need to chase victory. Victory comes to those who wait. It comes to those who endure. It comes to those who resist the urge to prove themselves before the time is right. To be first is not a virtue. It is an assumption of superiority. And assumptions are what bring men to failure. They mislead you. They make you think you know the way. But they only take you deeper into the battlefield, where you face your enemy's traps head-on. To be last is to be calm, to be precise, to be methodical. And in a world that worships chaos and speed, it is the quiet ones who are the most dangerous. When you are still, you see the enemy's every move. You know when they are hiding their true intention and when they are revealing it. You know when they are vulnerable and when they are overconfident. You know that their best moves are often their worst, and their last moves are their only chance for survival. And when they make their last attempt, they will be too weak to defend against yours. Your move, your silence, your patience, they all make the difference. This is why I wait. Because I know that true victory comes to those who are willing to give up the chase, to ignore the distractions, and to wait until the moment is ripe for the picking. When you move last, you make sure there is no escape. You make sure there are no second chances. And you make sure that the only thing left is the echo of your final strike. The battlefield is a mirror. It reflects not only strength, but insecurity. Not only strategy, but desperation. If you move too soon, it reveals something deeper than tactics. It reveals your inability to wait with purpose. And I do not fight against armies alone. I fight against the minds behind them. The minds that twitch under pressure, that crack under time. The ones that must act simply to feel alive. But a man who cannot sit still in discomfort is a man who cannot lead. I lead from silence. I lead from patience. And when I finally lead forward, it is never a question of if, only how completely I will end it. To most, the idea of waiting feels like surrender, because they mistake movement for life. But I am alive in stillness. In stillness, I breathe deeper. I think sharper. I listen longer. You may look at me and think I am idle, but I am always preparing, sharpening my intent, removing hesitation, tightening the coil that will strike only once. Stillness is not emptiness. Stillness is containment. And when that containment is finally released, there is no warning, no fanfare, just execution. The best general knows that he must not move until the map favors him completely. I wait for the conditions to ripen, not just for opportunity, but for certainty. I want to move into a field that has already surrendered, not because it was forced, but because it was exhausted. There is no glory in being early. There is only exposure. But in moving last, I do not gamble. I do not hope. I decide. I do not challenge fate. I create it. You think of power as something that must be shown, but real power is invisible until it is needed. It does not announce itself. It does not perform. It arrives once, and when it does, everything that came before it becomes irrelevant. That is the beauty of restraint. It is not weakness, it is reserve. A general who has learned to wait has learned to bend time itself. While others burn through their plans, I expand mine. While they exhaust their strength, I store mine. This is not passivity, it is premeditation, because I know every wasted move by my opponent becomes a signal. Every overreach, a tell. Every retreat, a map. They show me where not to go, and more importantly, they show me when to go. Timing is not a matter of chance. It is a result of discipline. It is sculpted through stillness. Every day I wait, I remove another variable from the outcome. Every hour I withhold, I increase the sharpness of my eventual blow. By the time I act, there will be no guessing, no improvising, no adjusting, just certainty. You may win the opening battle. You may even dominate the first stage of war. But if you waste your strength trying to prove something to the world, you will be empty by the time it truly matters. And that is when I move, not just to fight, but to conclude. I do not enter a war halfway. I enter only when the war is already lost, for the other side. That is the art of moving last. It is the art of invisibility, of precision, of control so absolute that it needs no second attempt. When you have mastered the art of waiting, you no longer feel the need to dominate every moment. You allow the world to unfold. You watch others chase urgency, piling decisions on top of anxiety, building towers so tall with panic that they forget they are standing on nothing. But I remember, the tallest structure built in haste is the first to collapse, and I do not build to be seen. I build to endure. They say, strike while the iron is hot. But I say, let the fire burn them first. Let the heat of their own desperation scorch their strategy while I remain just beyond the flame, untouched, unshaken. Because in war, what matters most is not how quickly you begin, but how clearly you finish. I've studied the faces of those who move too soon. Their eyes dart, their breath quickens, their words overflow. They believe movement creates meaning, but it only creates momentum. And not all momentum is progress. Sometimes it's just motion in the wrong direction. I prefer still direction. I prefer to know where I'm going before I begin. And to do that, I must let others reveal the map. Every enemy reveals more when they think no one is watching, when they believe they've caught you sleeping. That's when their pride takes over. That's when their caution fades. That's when they become loud. And loudness always gives away position. So, I let them believe I am late. I let them believe I am blind. Because when you underestimate silence, you overexpose yourself. The enemy who believes I am not coming will be unguarded when I arrive. The one who thinks I am lost will leave the door open. The one who assumes I've fallen behind will never see the final strike until it's already written in the dust. They've made their moves, and now I move, not out of need, but out of design. And in that final move, all the power they thought they had is revealed for what it truly was. A distraction, a performance, a fleeting illusion. You see, power doesn't exist in being everywhere. It exists in being precisely where you are needed, at the exact moment when it matters most. The blade you swing in panic is rarely sharp, but the blade you sharpen in patience cuts once and cuts through everything. My victory is never loud. It does not scream. It does not demand recognition. It simply stands alone at the end, calm, steady, unmoved by all that came before. That is what it means to move last. To hold the line while others collapse. To stand still while others stampede. To carry silence like a weapon and release it only when the battle is already won in spirit, even before the final blow is struck. I do not fear your speed. I do not fear your strength. I only watch your timing. Because if your timing is flawed, your entire campaign is built on sand. And when the tide of my arrival comes, your footing will vanish, and I will not even need to push. This is what they never understand. It is not the move itself that wins. It is when you make it, and what you refuse to make before then. They laugh at the man who waits. But they forget that the last voice in the room is the only one left when all others are done speaking. And that voice, if it is sharp, if it is clear, if it has waited long enough, will echo longer than all the noise that came before it. That voice is mine.